Hello and welcome back to Methodist Monday. I am Reverend Haven.
And I'm Pastor Mick.
And I'm Pastor Liz.
It is so good to be with you on this Methodist Monday. Today's topic is the social principles. What are those, you may ask? Well, sit back and relax because we're about to fill you in on a lot of information in a short amount of time. So, the social principles are a prayerful and thoughtful effort of the General Conference to speak to the issues in the contemporary world, in today's world, from a sound biblical and theological foundation. And so these are positions on controversial issues involving Christian principles. So they're not necessarily church law, it's just where the church stands on these concerns and issues. So these are found in the Book of Discipline and the Book of Resolutions. And it's just the concern for social justice that we have in the United Methodist Church is what they appeal to. And so the United Methodist Church adopted the social principles back in 1976. And so since then, we have edited, we've added to, and we have voted on these at General Conference. And so the first one is divided into six categories. And the first one is the natural world. And Mick's going to share a little bit about that one with us.
Yeah, so we start out with the natural world, and it makes sense, right? Because Genesis begins with the creation of the heavens and the earth, and that's what we as humans, as creation of God, we are called to care for the rest of God's creation. That includes the environment we live in. That includes the animals that we share this world with. A lot of people can point to looking to God and finding God through God's creation. And I believe in that. And the United Methodist Church believes in that. We believe that we are called to be good stewards of everything that we have, that we are called to make sure that everyone has clean water to drink, that everyone has food to eat. That is there. We have this because we take care of the world. And we as the United Methodist Church believe that if we don't take care of the world, then our grandchildren and their grandchildren will not have clean water, will not have the ability to have animals and to take care of what we've been given. And that lends into the idea of nurturing and the nurturing community of people. You know, we think of the natural world as the world out there, but the nurturing world, the community, is what happens when we live together as people, when we live together as married people or single people or families. We have these issues and we think, how do we as a church, how do we understand marriage, and how do we react to issues such as divorce, such as domestic violence, these real issues that happen? How do we as a church respond? And one of the great things about the United Methodist stances on these things is that we never make a belief that's out of a heart of exclusion. When we make a stance of divorce, for instance, and we say the United Methodist stance is that we are, against divorce, but we also are not against divorce and then kicking you out of the church. We have a stance that we want marriage to last forever, but we also believe in loving every person regardless of what happens, that we believe in divorce care. We believe in caring for the children. We believe that whenever we have a stance or a belief in something, above all should be nurturing and loving the people that are going through that issue. And that's kind of, I think, what a lot of our social principles are built upon.
Yeah, and just like Mick talks about the individual together in our relationships, as we build into our communities, we become a social community, right? And so as we form societies and whatnot, we have a responsibility to carry God's grace even into the way that we form our societies and as we continue in our work life. So our next social principle is the social community. And and it relates to more of the rights and the privileges of people. We affirm that all people are equally valuable in the sight of God. And so it's important for us to maintain this value and as we build our societies. And so when we work towards our societies, which will include each person as valuable, and where they will all be recognized, maintained, and strengthened in our societies. And so we kind of talk a little bit more about the basic rights for all people to have equal access to housing and education and communication, employment, medical care, and help in regards to legal things going on. And then of course in our physical life, right, we have the right to feel safe, and so we have right to physical protection. And so that just kind of leans into how we have the right to dignity. Everybody has a right to inherent dignity of all people. So we want to make sure that we value people in all the ways, right? And so this kind of, we look at the universal Declaration of Human Rights, and that helps guide our thoughts and our processes through this. And so whenever you look at the list of how this, in regards to this, you'll see that there are rights for men and women and children and young people and for the aging. But you'll also see that there are rights for racial and ethnic persons or religious minorities, and for persons with disabilities or immigrants, or rights in regards to sexual orientation. So like in the way that we show up for each other and value each other as people in our communities. And so that leads into, like, as we form our societies, we also form our economic structures, right? And so the next one is our economic community. And so our economic systems are under the judgment of God, no less than any other facet that it is a part of the created order. And so we recognize our responsibility to carry our faith on into our workplace, right? And so we recognize into our government, and that's just kind of how it lays out. And so we recognize the responsibility of governments to develop and implement sound fiscal and monetary policies that provide for the economic life of individuals and corporate entities, to ensure that there is full employment and adequate incomes with minimal inflation, so that we can live and take care of each other, that people have the ability to survive in this world. And so this will range more from property into poverty, and the way that we form our governments and our systems and from the public life and in our private life. And so how all areas of our life are incorporated into. So that's going to lead you into our next one, Haven.
Yeah, and so with all these communities, we realize there must be some type of order to them. And so next we have the political community, which its role is providing for the ordering of society. And so all political systems are under God's judgment, is the stance of the church. Our allegiance is to God first and the state second as Christians. However, we realize the importance and the value of our government for the need to order our society. And so it's our responsibility to take an active role and responsibility in our government. And so some of the things that fall under the political community are our basic freedoms and human rights. It's the right to a free and fair election. It's the right to have the freedom of speech and religion and assembly, if we feel so called to be a part of a peaceful protest that faces and goes against injustices, then we have the freedom and right to do so. It's the right and freedom of communication and the media. It's also our political responsibility. Our system depends on the involvement of citizens to take part in these things. So that is saying, hey, go vote. We're not telling you who to vote for, but it is our right, and we have the freedom to do that, to take part in it. The political community also takes on tough and difficult decisions like the death penalty, how we do value the sanctity and sacredness of God-given life. But what does that mean in the court and justice system? And that where that falls into our communities. And it also discusses crime and rehabilitation topics and concerns along with military service. And so these are some of the social political concerns that the church has taken stances on. But we also have the world community, and it provides the setting for the interaction of all nations. Yes, God bless America, right? But God also blesses every other nation because we are all created equal and beautiful in God's image and sight. So this world community is all of God's world, is one world. So how do we keep it peaceful, and how do we love one another in that, right? We strive to be a church that works towards being a world community and fellowship of persons who honestly love one another. So it's our responsibility to work to develop the moral and spiritual capacity to achieve a stable world of love. So the topics that fall under this community are nations and cultures, national powers and responsibilities, war and peace. We strive for peaceful unity, but we do realize that and understand that sometimes that's not always achievable. And so what does war look like in those extreme circumstances where there is sin and brokenness and hurt and there are no other options, and along with justice and law? So these are some of the things the church has taken a stance on, to holistically, through God's love, hopefully navigate through some of these difficult topics.
Yeah, and all of these social principles we see in our book of discipline and our book of resolutions. And we've referenced the book of discipline many times throughout the last few weeks, right? But we haven't talked about the book of resolutions. And the book of resolutions comes out just as often as our book of discipline. Every 4 years we have a revised version of both. And the reason for that is every time we meet for General Conference, we're not just doing the business of the church. That's a big part of what we're doing, but we're also doing the ministry of the church. We're creating stances on modern issues. We're using the social principles for our day-to-day lives. And these resolutions are written by people like me and you. They're written by clergy, by lay people. Any United Methodist can write in a resolution for discussion at General Conference. And we discuss these things, and we talk about what does it mean for us to follow our social principles in the year 2020 or whatever year that the General Conference is being held. We're not able to have a General Conference this year in the year 2020, but I'd be willing to bet that if we did, there would be a resolution on how we as United Methodists respond to COVID. I'm sure we would, because every time we meet together as United Methodists in holy conferencing, we talk about how can we be the best Christians, the best Methodists we can be, and where do we stand on real issues of the world. And that's what these social principles are about. You know, we can get tied into what each principle says or what each principle means, but in the end, it's about how we can love one another most fully, and where we stand as a church on these issues, because these are issues that affect people's lives, and we want to love people the best way that we can. And that's what the social principles are about, and that's what being a Methodist really is about.
Yeah, amen on that one, Mick. Well, we hope you have learned a thing or two about a thing or two today. If you'd like to know more on the social principles, we will attach a link that you can click on to read up on those, but you can also find them in the Book of Discipline. And also just by Googling social principles, United Methodist Church, and you can begin to find where the church stands on a lot of things that we've discussed today, if anything struck your curiosity. It has been a joy to be with you through these Methodist Monday sessions, and I hope you have a wonderful Advent season. If you have any questions or other topics that you'd like discussed, just give us a comment in the comment section or email one of your lovely pastors on the screen today. And I hope you have a very merry Methodist Monday.
See you soon.